to make out this path that comes down from the clinic area down to winding down this mountainous road. So as I'm making my way down, this is sort of where the road runs out, and you have to kind of go up and down these mountains for a couple of hours before you make it to that community. And this is one of those 48,000 mosques, as the data shows, right outside of our community center itself. And right as I was making my way down, back in December of 2012, along with two of my colleagues, one medical colleague and our driver, not too far from this very spot, we actually see the first gunman on the side of the road. Having worked in this setting for a while by that time, close to 4 years, I knew exactly what was going to happen, and unfortunately, it's not a good thing. I've had colleagues who've been in situations like this, and it turns out to be a roadside robbery. Usually, it's done within the first 5 minutes, and they kill you and move on to the next target. Simply, you what you have, move on to the next target. And as I saw the guy, I sensed a tension between my two Afghan colleagues, and thought to myself, I can't believe this is how my life is going to end. We were taken out of the vehicle, and I have to say the first 10 minutes or so, being left on the side, just sort of talking and getting some basic information, were probably one of the worst times in the entire 4 days that I ended up spending with them. Because you just don't know what's about to happen, and you anticipate that shot will take your life. We were fortunately put back into our vehicle and taken to a very remote area closer to these mountains, a good 30-40 minute drive, and then with our hands still tied behind our backs, asked to walk up these mountains, which in itself is a very difficult thing to do, since you don't have the hands to sort of balance yourself as you're walking up these mountains. We were asked to stop for a little while, and at that time I actually didn't know what they were conversing about and what they were planning on doing. But after a little bit of talk, we were left with about 3 of the 4 original captors and many others who had gathered together. 3 were left with us, and three of us, myself and the 2 colleagues, and we made our way up and down mountains for the rest of the day. It's interesting that I didn't anticipate a 9.5-hour hike for the rest of the day. And I eventually, now that I understand what exercise feels like, I've stopped telling people to exercise. Now that I know how difficult it is, I think part of the reason why it was so difficult is because of the emotional turmoil as well. And there's an aspect of the physical turmoil, but emotional and then the mental turmoil of dealing with the unknown is quite difficult to sort of experience. But what was amazing about that time is how much time I actually got to sort of settle my thoughts with God. I thought to myself, as a young child, not too different from any of these kids sitting up in front, I made a decision to be a medical missionary. And this is a choice that I made. I didn't necessarily, think through all the consequences of that, but I just assumed that as I made that decision for the sake of God's kingdom, He would take care of me. And I struggled with the idea of how does it work when you make a decision for God and God sort of abandons you. As I struggled with that idea, I came to the simple knowledge that what makes me think that God is not with me right now? I'm walking through these mountains in the middle of nowhere that I don't know of. And yet I have come to this conclusion that somehow God has forgotten about me and about my situation. And again, a very human perspective. When things are going well, God is great. When things are going wrong, all of a sudden, where did you go, God? How can you make this happen? How did you make a mistake? Why did you make this mistake? That was a great struggle to have. One of the pivotal points through which I was thinking through to us. At that time, my wife and I, we had 4 kids. And I was thinking about our youngest one. See, here he's outside, so I can actually just very openly say about this. I didn't know how he was going to turn out. If I had known he would be as chuckungy as he is now, I would have had a different type of conversation with God. But the conversation that I was having with God was, how can you allow a young father with a child who is barely 8 months old to die and for the child to grow up without a father? How can you allow for that? And as I struggle with that idea, I almost heard God speaking back to me. If you feel that much for your own son, how much do you think I love you? Do you not think that I care about you at this very moment? And that thought of God's care and abundant covering over me made me realize, wait, if God has always been present in my life, how can I possibly come to the conclusion, certainly a foregone human conclusion, that somehow he's not in this situation? And that switch of thought went from, I can't believe I have to endure this, to, wow, I can't believe I get to be the only Bible these guys will ever read. How many Taliban will have an opportunity to converse with a Christ follower? I can easily tell you 1 out of 10 or 20 or 30,000 of them. Very few. And in fact, we can count in one hand the number of Taliban members who have actually come to Christ due to Christians coming across them and sharing the gospel. And so that thought about, wow, I now have this great opportunity, great privilege of being the Bible that these guys would otherwise never read, just switched this whole mentality between woe is me to, wow, this is God's doing. And however he wants to take this forth, however he wants to bring about the conclusion of this, it doesn't matter how it ends. My life or death is, in fact, unrelated to God's glory, depending on how he decides for this situation to end, how he decides for this to end up. And that was a great switch, because I went from thinking about all the things that I couldn't be thankful for to making a list of all the things that I certainly assumed that, maybe a day or 2 at the most. This is not going to go on for too long. We had no idea where we were being taken. And so that went into a time of just praising God about all the things I could be thankful for. And as I began to list the things I was thankful for, I think that exercise took almost an hour or hour and a half of just praising God and just listing all the things I could be thankful for. And soon enough, I made this decision that I'm gonna take every single opportunity, whatever I get with these guys, to just share my life with them. Whatever opportunity I'm given, however it looks like, I'm going to make it a point to share my life with them. And the very first time we sat down, which was about 4.5 to 5 hours into the hiking process, I asked my medical colleague for permission to just speak with them. And there's an icebreaker that I do just in terms of introduction in my medical and leadership training courses that I've done connected in the country, where I make it a point to say that my kids, my children, actually have Afghan blood in them. And it's mainly due to my wife's paternal line that goes back like two or three or more, maybe 4 generations. Great-great-great-grandmother, who was a Pashtun princess, who back in the days there was no India or Pakistan or Afghanistan as the geopolitical lines were drawn back then. She had made her way down with her entire family and reason to the Hindu Kush regions, down to the present-day Delhi region. So as I make it a point to say that, I always have a great reception of people asking, do you know exactly which province this lady would have come from, exactly which district, because they want to pinpoint where my lineage or my wife's lineage or my kids' lineage would have come back to within Afghanistan. So I'm not sure whether I expected these guys to have some sort of a similar reception. Certainly I wasn't expecting them to say, great, you're one of us now, we'll let you go. But I expected something. When I didn't get anything at all, I didn't know how to take that other than to feel a bit of a emotional letdown perhaps, but as soon as I felt that even, I thought to myself, wow, I just took this decision to just obey, just be obedient. However God works this out is really up to God. How He wants to work out in the hearts, I have no control over that. So I felt good that I was beginning to exercise in faith the obedience that I felt that I need to do, to be part of during however long this time was going to take. That moment went on to more hiking, and of course we were almost done as it approached close to midnight, and we ended up in an abandoned shack for the second day morning, and there we received our demands for the rest of the time. They went on to proceed to tell us that we would be given 3 days. On the 4th day, there will be Taliban from the headquarters in Pakistan that will come to take us to the headquarters in Pakistan. That didn't sit too well with me, given my Indian ethnicity. I didn't think I would survive. If I had survived that long, I would survive too long in Pakistan. And they hadn't quite come up with a number as to what they were looking for in terms of ransom. But they pretty much said, you have to follow whatever we're telling you to follow. If you don't follow our commands, we will kill you. And as I was thinking about the 3 days, right away I thought, man, anything is going to take at least 5 days, because it already was Thursday morning in Afghanistan, and Thursday, Friday is their holiday weekend, and then it will be Saturday and Sunday over here. So I look to my colleague and I tell them, would you explain that we need at least 5 days to get these negotiations going? He just looked at me and he said, you want me to speak logic to the Taliban? So I said, okay, never mind, let's just see what happens. Soon enough, the sun came up, and we didn't get much of a shut-eye throughout the night, and they were showing us a lot of vehicles on one of their smartphones about how the NATO forces were mistreating the Taliban or Mujahideen members. And some of them just looked so gory that it was very difficult to keep our eyes focused on that. But as soon as we were just out of necessity, just take our eyes off of it, one of them would quickly say, no, you don't have that freedom. Please focus on what we're showing you. And soon enough, the sun came up and we hiked for another couple of hours. We made our way to another somewhat better-looking shack where we ended up spending the rest of the day. And this second day essentially became very much an answer to prayer from my perspective. Everything that I was thinking about on the first day in terms of how do I really connect with people. Truly, if God doesn't make a mistake, and God always gives you opportunities to really reflect Him and His greatness and His goodness, how do I really do this? I have nothing, absolutely nothing that I can compare myself to. But all that I could think of were all the differences that I had. Whether it's my upbringing, my worldview, you name it, education, everything that I can think of were different from these guys. So I could only think about the differences. I didn't think about any similarities. I think it was God's way of sort of showing me how wrong I could be at times in the way the second day worked out. In walks one of our 4 main captors, original captors, who came in, and within the first half an hour or so, after we made our first phone call up on the mountain to get better cell reception, we sat down, and the first question he asked me is, do you mind if I just ask you some questions? I said, absolutely, just ask away. My life is an open book. I would love to share my life with you. Whatever questions you have, just ask away. And the first question he asked is, where did you first meet your wife? And so I told, a couple of days ago, I had the opportunity to speak to my alma mater in Azusa Pacific at their chapel. And I was joking with them, saying that I gave away the location, and told them that I met my wife at college. But I just said, generically said, yeah, I met her in college a long time ago. And the very next question was, do you love her the same way today as you did the very first time you met her? And I'm sort of beginning to pinch myself, although this is the second or third question, because asking about my love life is not quite what I expected from active Taliban members. And then he went on to ask me about my children. How many children do you have? Do you have any favorites? How do you treat them? How do you treat them differently? And as I'm going on through a lot of these answers, he's beginning to ask me about my immediate family, my extended family, although they don't have those definitions or those categories. They're just asking about family members. As we got down to like second cousins and more, I'm thinking, my goodness, why is he asking so many like detailed, private family questions? And it hit me, it's not just about maybe trying to get a feel for whether I come from a well-to-do, financially well-to-do family, but it's more than that. His definition as a tribal Pashtun young man, his definition of family is a tribe that consists of thousands, if not 10,000 of people. I'm barely mentioning maybe 50, 60 people. And he's wondering, why do you not have any family members? And your definition of a family, why is that so different from mine? And then he went on to ask me about where all the family members work, what my cousins do for a living, and then the conversation switched. What I hoped for him to allow me to ask, he began to reflect back to me. The first reflection was, you do what you do because this is what your parents have taught you. I do what I do because this is what my father has done my entire life. I haven't seen my father for the past 14 years. He's been in prison. He was 5 years old the last time I saw him. I stopped him right there and I said, "You're only 19 years old? This kid looked like he could be in his early to mid-30s. Just because of the rugged, harsh lifestyle that they lead. It would have been, I wouldn't have guessed at all that this guy is barely in his late teens. And so I stopped him and I said, "I'm old enough to be your father." It was probably one of the few times he actually stopped for a millisecond just to sort of take that thought in. And he just continued with questions after questions after questions. And then when he went on to ask about, these are some questions that I wouldn't have expected in a million years. Can you take me to America? Wanting to live for a few more moments, I said, absolutely. Let's look at how we can make that happen, okay? You have to go get a passport from an Afghan passport agency, go to the U.S. Embassy, get a visa. I didn't even finish the statement before he said, "You realize I've never even gotten out of my own village, let alone to the biggest city in Kabul, just about 60 miles east of us. This is all I have known all my life. If I give you a gun, would you be able to shoot people?" And I said, "No, given my profession and also my faith background, that's a lost thing. That's the opposite of what I try to do." And he said, "The very first time I shot someone, I was 5 years old. I was remorseful that very first time. But unfortunately, I've never thought twice about any of this ever since then. It's become my habit that now I can't change." And then he says, "If you take me to America, can I start my life all over again? What would I be able to do? Would I be able to get educated?" And he easily fit into that category of very few kids who even ever had the opportunity to ever see, even let alone go to a school. During the Taliban time, which was a time when he was, he should have been going to school, there were 5,000 kids in the entire 9 to 11 million kids who could be going to school, doing any sort of